Right, welcome. Today we're taking apart a Dell Alienware 17R5 gaming laptop. This has the 8th gen Core i7 with the GTX 1080 video card. So to start out, we're going to need a small Phillips bit. This is a 2.5, and we're just going to be removing the bottom case screws. So we'll be getting the cover screws here, and since I'll be taking the rear vent, I'm also going to get the 2 screws here. Alright, once you have the screws removed, I think this one's got a little backing on it so it doesn't come all the way out. You're just going to get a spudger and run it along the top here. So you get it to start to pop up, and then do the same for the other side. And once you get it mostly popped up, you can just keep working your way around. And we have a good look at the inside and what we can get to pretty easy. So looks like the SSDs, they have slots for a couple different sizes. Those are easy to get to. Hard drive easy to get to, RAM easy to get to. So that's about it. If you need to replace the fan and heatsink assembly, it looks like it's going to be pretty in depth. We'll have to remove all the screws here for the subframe. Inside, I guess this would be the bottom case, that would be the bottom cover. But yeah, so most of the easy stuff, regular stuff, is easy to switch out, and a little more in depth for the fans. So we'll get started on taking out the, I think that's the battery connector right there. So we'll go ahead and do that first. Just grab the little tabs with your fingernails and work that connector out. And then we can go ahead and start removing the other stuff. Ram sticks, we're just going to spread the little clips there. And then we can pull it out of the slot. This is DDR4 2400. Alright, so for the hard drive and the SSD, it's just going to be one little keeper screw, and this might have a pad on the back. Nope. So once that pops up, just pull it out of the slot, and it's an NVMe 2280. Alright, so the SATA connector, I'm just going to pull straight up on that and just free that SATA cable from the little clip. And we can remove the 2.5-inch hard drive. Alright, so a little wiggle that will pop up, and then you just have the 2 screws on either side to release the hard drive and the SATA cable. And it just should, this one's kept by the hard drive caddy, so you won't be able to remove the SATA cable until you remove the caddy. Alright, so the next thing we need to do is we're going to remove the back vent. I think I can get to what I need to remove this from up here. Then after we have the back vent off, we're just going to go through and undo all these cables. Since I will be removing the motherboard, I think on this model the palm rest comes up and off, and the motherboard might actually be attached to the bottom case. It's kind of hit and miss on some of these, so but I'll find out when I get all the screws out and then we separate them. So the seam for the vent, that little rear vent panel, it's up here at the top. It looks like you have to kind of start popping that, and then we'll turn it over and remove those other clips. But basically there's retainer catches on both sides that need to be popped up, and then the easiest way to remove this vent is just to keep pressure on it. Like just keep pulling on it with maybe your fingernails, and then just pop your spudger or whatever tool you have in there and just go along and try to free it from the little clips. Okay, I have it on the bottom, so it's just going to be a matter of holding some tension on, just clip back in. So this might be kind of a pain, but that's what you have to do. So if you can find something to kind of leave in this side, something kind of thin, I think I'll just use the old laptop key. Okay. And that will help keep that side unclipped, and then we can, there we go. So now that I have it spread pretty well on this side, it's just a matter of working it free. And I got most of the top clips already, so it should slide out pretty easy. Okay, so it's these clips and these clips. Just work them both out on opposite sides until you get one side pulled out, and then you should be able to work it the rest of the way out. Okay, so most of these connectors are either just a simple kind that you pull out, or they have a little pull out retainer. So we're just going to work the rest of these ribbons out and free them from the case here. That's kind of odd. So that might actually be a cable. It's either a cable or a really long piece of tape right there. I'm not sure what I'm looking at. It must be for the little LED. Okay, so it looks like we'll take that off too. And actually I think I'll leave that with the bottom case if I can, and then I'm just going to undo the connector up here. I just want to kind of free this cable from this little case assembly here so that we can remove it later. Okay, so we got that free. I do see a screw. Okay, that's just for the SSD. I think I can leave that. All right, so we have the keyboard. We're just gonna pop up on a little piece of plastic and remove that keyboard ribbon, and then we can push it back in the connector. Same for the keyboard backlight, it appears. Just lift up on that, pull the cable out, push it back down. And repeat. I believe this is the speaker connection. Last one here on the right. So we're going to pull that out. It's kind of hard to get in there, both sides on the tabs, so you might need to use a spudger for the one that's not really accessible. Alright, and then looks like we got the Tron light connector. Some of these connectors are just absolutely like tiny, and it can be hard to pull out of that slot. So let's work on it and it should come out. So same deal over here, we're just gonna pull up that LED and unplug it. And then get it ready to remove from the case. Alright, so we got one more connector right here. Appears for the DC jack. So go ahead and pull that out and double check for any more. Looks like we have a Wi-Fi card under the cover here, so easy to miss. It's under a little black cover, so we'll just remove the screw for that. Interesting bracket. Alright, so the card flips up, just pull it out of the slot. Okay, I don't see any more cables, and so I'm just going to go all around the case here and finish removing all the screws, except for I'm going to leave the ones on the heatsink for now. I see a couple of those exposed, and then I'll also remove the DC jack retainer bracket. Alright, once you have those frame screws out, we're going to find the seam between the palm rest and the bottom case, and just get the spudger in there and just start popping the two apart. Okay, so it does look like the kind of this bottom case here is going to be the thing that comes out, and most of the other stuff is bolted to the palm rest. Okay, feels nice and loose now, so we'll go ahead and just slowly pull up on it and make sure that we got all the cables disconnected. The inner bottom case. Okay, so now we can get to the battery, and I'm just going to remove the screws and pull it out. One middle. So that is a type N9JM1. Okay, so we can finish removing the motherboard connectors. Looks like most of them have been removed already. And it looks like the connector for the in-out board is going to be on the bottom side. So we're just going to loosen the in-out board here. This is probably going to have to come out with the motherboard to get to that connector. And it looks like there's a speaker connection on the bottom of that, so I'll go ahead and unplug that. Okay. Also want to unstick the CMOS battery. And I'll just finish removing the bracket here. So it looks like for the fans and heatsink assembly, we'll go ahead and pull that next. And it looks like just a bunch of Phillips screws. So as far as removing it, it doesn't matter which order you take these screws off, but when you put them back on, the order that you're supposed to tighten it is stamped on the heatsink. So just tighten it down that order. It's meant to go like kind of crossways so that it tightens down evenly on that thermal paste. So we'll go ahead and remove the screws. Okay, I think I got all the screws out. One thing of note, one screw was extremely tight. So like it was so tight that it actually made a snapping sound when it finally gave way. I've noticed some manufacturers do that. It's not uncommon to have one of those heatsink screws to be like exceptionally tight. So I don't know what that's about, but I do see it a lot. Okay, so as long as you make sure you've got the screws out. And where is the connector? Okay, it looks like the fan and heatsink assembly connectors are attached to the bottom of the motherboard. That's unfortunate. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and just remove any other screws we see attached to the motherboard, and we'll have to take it out as an assembly. All right, so we got most of the assembly screws out. I do recommend leaving one. I almost forgot about some connectors that are on the bottom side here, so it might be easier just to do these with the top side up, but I'm just gonna go ahead and unplug them. So it's just the same type as where it's connected on the motherboard before, simple pull-out type. Get a better view of that. So that's the display cable that's kind of a pain to get to. So you have to get your fingernail kind of down in there and just pull that bar free. It looks like there's just that one next to it. So yeah, it'd probably be easier to do this before you take out the motherboard screws. I just spaced it that these were up here after the vent was removed. So just before you remove, or you can just put a screw in the motherboard and then you don't have to worry about holding it while you remove those last connectors. So the main thing is you just get all the connectors that are held onto the motherboard that you can access from the top, and then you'll need to remove at least the motherboard screws, and then keep the fan assembly with the motherboard. And then when you're lifting up on the motherboard, just make sure to feed the connectors through for the stuff that's poking up. Looks like we got the Wi-Fi antennas. And then just pay attention to the board here, the in-out board, that doesn't get caught on anything. Okay, so we have the in-out board, same type of connector. And we're just gonna pull up on the little bar and pull it free from the motherboard. And the fan connectors are simple type, so we're just gonna get our fingernails on those. And pull them free from the motherboard. Okay, so now we should be able to separate the heatsink from the motherboard. Providing you remove the tape. Okay, so we have the tape undone and the fan assembly removed. And it looks like those are 1 and 2 millimeter thermal pads. And then we have the bare motherboard. I'm not typically excited about manufacturers that do that will put a few connectors on the bottom side of the motherboard instead of all on one side. It just makes working on it harder, and it makes it easier to break things. Most manufacturers don't do that, but Alienware is pretty bad about it. And I've noticed a lot on the Dells as well are the ones that have the one really tight heatsink screw. In the comments, I've seen a lot of comments about people stripping out those screws. So I would definitely just make sure you have the right size driver, and if it's really hard and you feel like you're going to strip it, just wait and take the motherboard out before you try to push down any harder on that, because you don't want to break the motherboard. So it's easier not to break it if you just take it out and lay it down on something sturdy. Okay, so we'll set that aside and just start removing the rest of the parts on the palm rest. Looks like the keyboard is removable. We're going to be leaving that attached, and the touchpad looks removable as well. It's just some Phillips screws. We're going to leave that attached, but I mean, as you can see, it's just a number of Phillips screws to remove, so it's pretty self-explanatory. Okay, remove that power button. We can now remove the DC jack now that the motherboard has been removed. I don't like that kind of design where something that's, I mean, it's one of the easier things to break on your laptop. You basically have to take apart the entire thing to get that DC jack out. That's not my favorite design. Alright, so we'll turn it around, get a better look. The speakers are just held in with some rubber grommets, and just a few screws around the perimeter of the touchpad and mouse buttons, and then a number of screws here around the perimeter and back of the keyboard. Alright, so we're going to finish freeing up these cables and making them able to be pulled through the assembly. Alright, now we'll go ahead and remove the LCD hinges. And we'll just need to feed the wiring through. Alright, so that is it for the palm rest assembly. Alright, so now we can finish taking apart the screen assembly. Just get your fingers on the inside of that bezel and just use your fingers to pull up. So you'll do all the sides until you get to the bottom, and of course they want to put a long strip of adhesive on the bottom of the screen, so when you remove the bezel it tears up the screen. So just get your finger under there and you'll feel where it's kind of pulling up on it. So just keep one finger in there and just keep removing that bezel. Now, it sounds bad, but it's just the sound of the adhesive giving way. So this entire strip right here is along the bottom of the screen, and what it does is it rips up this little liner to the screen. So if you don't get your finger under there to kind of hold it, it's gonna rip up this portion of the screen. Okay, so taking a quick look, we have our we're going to need to loosen the light to be able to remove the LCD, I believe. So we'll go ahead and remove the screws for that Alienware light. Actually, I'm going to just put them aside. We're going to remove the LCD, but leave the other stuff here as an assembly. But once you have the LCD removed, the rest of the stuff's pretty easy. There's not much to it. Okay, so now we can swivel that light out of the way, and I'm going to remove the 4 LCD screws. Alright, so we're just going to gently flip this panel up so that we can unplug it from the assembly. So we're just going to peel back the sticky tape there, and just be careful once you get close to the connector, because if it gives suddenly you can rip the video cable completely out. And this adhesive, it seems like it's made to give quickly. You got to be real careful at the end. Okay, and this one also has a little flip down bar, so get the tape and the little bar, and then you can just pull straight up on the LCD and remove it from the back cover assembly. Okay, so taking a final look, we've got our hinge screws to remove the hinges. The LED fiber optic stuff is here running on the perimeter, and you have your Bluetooth and Wi-Fi antennas. Webcam is just stuck on with adhesive, so is the webcam cable, so you just basically unstick that. So everything pretty much in here is just taped on except for the hinges. So that is it. That is how you disassemble an Alienware 17R5. If this video helped you or you found it informative, please like and subscribe. Thanks.